Hello everyone, in this video I will show you how to create database challenges in OneCompiler. We'll take MySQL as a reference. So before starting with the challenge creation, let's understand the basics of the MySQL editor in OneCompiler and how it works. So when you go to the editor, it gives the default code. So the default code has a table creation, inserting couple of rows and querying them. When we run this command, every time when I run all of these commands going to get executed on a fresh new database, and it will result the output of the select commands typically as an output. So it does not like store anything. Every time we run it, it runs on a empty database. So for example, let's say if you're thinking that, let's say, employee creation and insertion is done in this editor, and then if I delete this and then just run the select star, it does not work, because again it is going to run on a free empty database. So every time this needs everything, so all the commands get executed on a empty database. So that's one basic. The second thing is we have something called init schema. So there is a special file called init.sql, and whenever this is an optional file, and whenever an init.sql is provided, of course here you can add anything, any tables or anything like that. So the idea is that before running your queries, we run the init.sql first, and then on that database with whatever the inserted things, we will run the rest of the command. So when init.sql is given, think like on a blank database, first this script get executed and then this script. So why? There are a couple of advantages with the init.sql. For example, let's say you are working on a large data set like a table and then 1,000 records. You can push all of that data into init.sql, and then you can write your queries on the queries.sql rather than printing those or giving those thousands of lines here. And also this comes very handy when we are creating tests. We will see that in a minute. So again, just to see this in live, maybe what I can do is, so I'll push the table creation and then the data insertion into init.sql, and then just keep the select star in the queries, and it will still work as expected, like the same as previous, because I am going to run this first and then the queries. So for example, let's run it as a count star and run it. We'll start seeing this results. So these are the basics. And then another thing that I want to add is that databases also do accept stdin, and when stdin is given, this is optional again, when it is given, we run that command at the end. So the sequence wise, init.sql first, queries next, and then the stdin. And if stdin is given, whatever that particular command returns, we will print that as an output. Let's do one thing. So let's take a fresh thing one more time. So in this case, for example, we can use queries.sql as a base file which is inserting some data, and then I can actually fire this query here and run it. So it gives the output here. So what it is doing is treating the queries.sql as our schema initialization and running this first. And as this is not empty, on that database with all these things ran on that database, it is running stdin as a command. So this also comes very handy when we are creating tests. We will see that in while we are creating a test. So yeah, these are the basics that you need to know before actually creating a challenge in the OneCompiler. So now let's go ahead and then start creating a challenge. So we'll call it MySQL demo test. I'll for now keep a dummy description. I'm not going to choose any additional options. I create one. So go to problems, let's say add a problem, and let's say first basic MySQL program is something like print all the rows. Let's say this is the first program we want to assume that we are going to test commands step by step. So first we will do select star test. So we'll ask the user to do that. So for now I'm skipping the description, not giving too many details here, but ideally, like, you may want to give how the table looks like, what is the table name, etc here. So here you need to choose coding and then database. So let's limit it to MySQL for now, not all the database, because we are setting up data for that. So now For example, we want to do a select star on. So I have actually asked this question that, hey, I am creating an MySQL based coding assessment. Can you give me an employee database as a reference? So ChatGPT gave me a bunch of data for me. So what I'll do, I will go here. And so if you're using the challenges in OneCompiler, you might already know what are the preloads are. So we will use the preload concept so that we load that data ready for the user while taking the test. So first step, I'll create a new MySQL code, and I will create an init schema, and I'll do all of this data initialization here. So that way here I can say that write your query below. So we'll see all of these things in action, how these come together in a minute. So ideally we do this where in the init schema we give the table creation, data initialization, etc., so that they are not shown to the user and overwhelming. So we'll do this, run it. So when you run it, of course it not printing anything, so it did not print anything, that's fine. Take this code which is created. So every time in OneCompiler you run it, it creates a unique code and paste it here. Okay, so we will know why we are doing this in a minute. So what it means is when this particular problem is loaded, then user going to see the code that you have written by default. So this is something called preloads in OneCompiler. So now let's also add a little bit of description. So there is a table called, so we'll give the table name to the user, which is employee, and we'll ask write a query to print all the data from the table. So as I was saying, we will test the select star in it. So user runs it, right, and user will see the output and so on. So what I'll do is because we need to write the test case now whether user has written the select star properly. So if user has done it, it should give something. We will try to assert towards that. So what I'll do, first I'll write the query from, so I think it's employee. I'll copy paste and run it. Sorry, yeah, run it, and this is the expected output. So what I'll do, I'll take this and create a test case out of it. So assuming that user created the select star, so for this no input is needed, so I'll remove the input. In the output I expect this thing, so I copy paste this, and I think for this one test case is good enough. So I'll leave it here and I save the problem. So let's create one more. I think this is good enough. The only thing is like, so I might need to remove this code. Otherwise, on every run, we actually save the latest copy. So user, we don't want to show that to the user. So I removed it. Maybe what I'll do is I'll make a copy of it, and so that we can experiment it here. Anyway, we'll come back to it. So this is one sample problem. We'll add another problem. So here we'll make use of giving a proper stdin. So we'll see that in a minute. So for that, let's say we are asking user to do some data manipulation. So then we can actually write another test case to see whether user has done the right data manipulation or not. So we'll say that in this question, we'll say, hey, delete a user where age is above, let's say 40, right? So that way, or let's say greater than or equal to 40. So the expectation is that user writes a query which deletes the data where age is above 40 and which results in the remaining data. So let's do that. So we'll name the title saying delete where age greater than or equal to 40. So write a query to delete the data from table, and we'll give the name employee, uh, where the age is greater than or equal to 40. Column name is age, just to make it very clear. So code, database. So here now we want to assert whether user has performed that action or not. So first let's do one thing. Let's create this data set. We can actually use the same code. Why not? Because that also kind of needs the same data set. But again, you can use new code and based on the question that you are creating. So for now, I'll create the same thing. So I'll keep this, meaning it loads here, and then we will ask the user to write the delete query. So now what I'll do here is I'll write a couple of test cases here so that we are asserting the user changes properly. So let me do one thing. I'll create a new so that I'm not going to tamper the old ID which I have configured here. So I'll create a new MySQL, paste it here. So now let's start seeing. So let's assume user has written the right query. So I do select star from employee and I get this, and let's say I'll write delete from employee where age greater than or equal to 40. So I've done this, and let's say let's do this first, this and then, right? So this worked. So I should be seeing what, 8 rows now. So 1 2 3 4 is gone, 5 6 7 is gone. So looks like it worked. So assume user has written this. So now we want to write test cases to assert this. So there are a couple of ways that I can assert, right? So for example, one way is that I do count star from employee. If you see, I'm writing here because I'm gonna use this concept as a test case input, and then this whatever coming as a test case output. So this will be easy to create a test case. So now I will do this and run it. I should be seeing 8 instead of 10. So this becomes one of my test case. So I'll go here and add a test case. So assume user has written a delete command properly. So once that is written, and that's where user ends. User does not do anything extra. So now what we will do is that we will run these test cases on top of the user's code. So now when we run this, we expect this to come. So this is one test case, right? So we'll add another test case. So let's say just to make sure that he actually deleted all the rows where the age is greater than 50. So what I'll do select count star from employees and where age greater than or equal to 40, and this should give me 0, right? So this also another test that I can add. So for example, I do this and I expect this result, right? So I think this is good enough, but we can keep adding more test cases. For example, because I know the data, I can also say that select star from employee where let's say name equal to this should not come, right? So I can literally do something like this and expect not to print anything, but yeah, this does not make much sense. We cannot put this as a expected output. So I'll not do this, maybe something else. So I'll do this. So let's say assume we are testing something like where user did not delete a required row. For example, maybe if user writes a command something like delete from this table where age less than 27, probably the previous 2 test cases will still or maybe not, the second test case will catch it up, but I'm just creating an imaginary scenario to just add another test case. So let's say I want to add another test case where I want this data to be there even after the deletion. So I can write another test case like this. So if I do this, I expect this to come. So writing test cases is as simple as this. So we will I can categorize this database test into 2 things. One is that we will ask the user to write a query to print the data in a way you wanted. The second is asking the user to do some data manipulation. It can be adding a data, deleting a data, and so on. So to ask the user to print something that you wanted, you can write a very simple test case where you expect nothing and input nothing and then output exactly what you wanted. In the data manipulation case, you may want to add test cases like this where user done with the data manipulation and you want to write some test cases so that you can assert that whether user really deleted the data like exactly how you ask for. So for now you may not do this, but what I'll do is I'll make all of these test cases public, because this is us, we are going to take the test now, so it makes our life easy to see what is the expected thing and all of that while we are testing. So I'll make that visible, save the problem. So I think these two are a good example of how database tests can be done. So now we will go to view the challenge and we will try to see from the user point of view. So now as a user, I came here, I'll read about my first query, which is print all rows. So there is a table called employee, write a query to print all the data from the table. So I'll start writing. So let's say select, let's say first I'll do a mistake and see whether the system catches it. So instead of star, I'll do or I'll miss the star. Okay, select star from I miss the star and say from employee. So this will definitely result in an error. So I'll try to submit it and my test case fails, right? So let's say I still make, so in this case the code itself invalid. Now I'll write a meaningful code but still invalid output. So I'll do this, test case fails. So now I'll make the right answer for it. So let's say select star from employee and my test case should pass, which has happened here. So I'm done with this. I come here. So now write a query to delete the data from table employee where age is greater than 40 and column name is age. So just like before, we'll write the wrong query first. So what I'll do, I'll say delete from employee. So assume I do not put any condition, right? So that means it deletes everything from the table. So I'll run it and see, and this delete does not output anything. Okay, so I'll go and submit it. So all my test cases should fail. Weirdly, how this got successful. Okay, so even though I deleted everything, so this test case is like writing something like select star from employee where age greater than 40, and we were expecting 0, and then it got the 0. So weird thing. So but you get the point, right? How these test cases work. So obviously this failed. This is doing for a select count star, expecting a count of 8, but we are getting a count of 0, and this is failing. Similarly, this I am expecting some rows and they are failing. So this is failing. So now let's write the right query. So select star from employee where so let me read the prompt again. So it says that table is this, column name is this. So where age greater than 40. So even this is a wrong. We will see. So again test case has failed, and so now this got successful. Okay, so because for this test case point of view, it is looking for this data to be there after user made the changes. So this is still getting successful. So I'll write the exact right query and submit it. This should make all the test cases successful. So now all the test cases are successful, and this is how we do the MySQL or any database based challenges in OneCompiler. So let's wind up by looking at the leaderboard and the submission. So I can see the leaderboard here, who all attempted and what's the score and whatnot. The submission, I can see several other things based on how you configure the test, and we can also see the queries that user has written, how many times they submitted, etc. So yeah, so that's pretty much wanted to show how the database tests works. So you can also explore some of the existing database tests, so which will also give you some idea on how these challenges works. For example, you can search for MySQL. So for example, there is this MySQL beginner challenge. This gives a very good idea on how these database tests work. Again, I was demoing and then I was quickly writing some description, but when you are actually doing a real test, you can nicely put the description like this, where try to describe how the data looks like, what are the column definitions and so on, so that as a user I understand the data structure and write the respective queries. So here print all employees, departments count. So employee with name Michael, so where I'm expecting a user to write a query with a where condition. We are testing the maximum of salary kind of things, and the employee with the maximum salary, and so on and so on. So pretty much all the questions that you want to actually ask in databases to test database knowledge are doable with OneCompiler. But again, they are not very straightforward like programming questions, but you need to play around with a bit with init.sqls, stdin, and so on, but you will be able to stitch the question for whatever you want to ask. Cool, that's it. Thank you. Hope you will explore the database style challenges in OneCompiler.